Well, a warm welcome to today's talk. Now, the British Medical Journal's recently been fact-checked by Facebook and found to be wanting. That's right, that is what I said. The British Medical Journal has been fact-checked by Facebook. So we're going to put that into a little bit of context today, because I think part of the problem was lack of context. So let's see if we can contextualise this. But before we do that, I'm going to look at some completely unrelated history, or you can decide if it's unrelated or not. But here it is. Now, this is a book called 1984, and in the appendix, George Orwell describes about the principles of Newspeak. So Newspeak is going to be the new way to talk. Now, George Orwell wrote this in 1948. He called the book 1984. Anyway, this Newspeak, it was expected that Newspeak would have finally superseded Oldspeak. And Oldspeak, of course, is the standard English, as we should call it, where words mean what they say. But he expected this to happen by about the year 2050. Now, this actually sent some tingles up and down my back, unpleasant ones it must be said, when I read that date, because of course George Orwell was writing this 102 years before the event, but now it's not that long relatively to 2050. I really hope Newspeak is not going to supersede standard English. The purpose of Newspeak was not only to provide a medium for expression for the worldview and mental habits proper to the devotees of Ingsoc. So very important to have the right mental habits, isn't it? So not just for devotees, but to make all other modes of thought impossible. We don't want anyone thinking against the way that we think. George Orwell, of course, he died in early 1951. I wish I'd lived longer so our lives would have overlapped. Unfortunately not. But and he wrote this in 1948, published in 1949. He knew he was dying, and he just wanted to leave this to you and me. So maybe we'll make that sacrifice worthwhile by taking note of that date. We really don't want Newspeak to supersede by then. Now, the British Medical Journal's got a bit of a track record, it has to be said. A bit of a track record, the British Medical Journal. Now, I think one of these fact checkers described the British Medical Journal as a news blog, and they're right. It has got a bit of a record, actually. Let's just look at the record for the British Medical Journal, shall we? And let's see if it's justified to call it a news blog. So this is the first paper published by the British Medical Journal, and it was on the 3rd of October 1840. So this has been going for some time now. And you know, it really is a pity that we've been wallowing around in confusion now until these fact checkers could come along and give us such glorious illumination, isn't it? You know, we've been waiting since 1840 for this. Thank goodness they've come at last. Dear me. So that was one thing. 1840 started, and then they published a little article by Dr. Simpson, I think it was, on chloroform. This is so basically they published the first article on using general anaesthetics. For one, I am delighted that general anaesthetics have been invented, and I'm sure many of you are. It was first published in the British Medical Journal, which they describe as a news blog. Okay. So that was the paper on chloroform. These are all available in the public domain. Go to I'll put the link there, of course. So that was quite an interesting development. Chloroform. Here's another one: Antiseptic Principles in the Practice of Surgery by Joseph Lister. I mean, if you know anything at all about the history of medicine, this name will just jump up and hit you between the eyes. I mean, Joseph Lister, the very inventor of sterility and asepsis and cleanliness in surgery, first published in the British Medical Journal by Joseph Lister, Fellow of the Royal Society, Professor of Surgery, the University of Glasgow. First published in the British Medical Journal in 1867. There you go, 1867. Anyway, that's quite an interesting one. Now this one, the British Medical Journal first published streptomycin as the treatment for tuberculosis. This is of immense importance for the treatment of tuberculosis, which was endemic in the UK and the United States, of course. Still is, tragically, in many parts of the world. But not only is this of profound significance for being able to be the first treatment for tuberculosis, it was also the world's first randomised, I think it was double-blind, yeah, it was double-blind. It was either blind or double-blind controlled trial. This is basically the world's first clinical trial. The world's first clinical trial published in the British Medical Journal, 1948. Total landmark stuff. Amazing. They've come up with anything decent since then. British Medical Journal, smoking, cancer of the lung. This is written by the great Richard Doll and Austin Bradford Hill. And that was published, believe it or not, they worked that out in 1950. Wow. So there you go, British Medical Journal broke the story, to use modern parlance, that smoking causes lung cancer. And of course later they pointed out that smoking causes heart disease as well. So not a bad paper to have published. And the other thing is about them, they make it freely available around the world to lower income countries. And of course I'm a regular reader as well. So that was the first thing I wanted to point out, the track record of the British Medical Journal. Now, it's not just the British Medical Journal. I've had a few fact checks myself. There's more than this. These are just ones that I found easily, so there we go. Missing context. What's that one? Partly false information. That was from Dr. Hugh Laurie, an experienced medical doctor and doctor of philosophy. Yeah, didn't like that one either. Partly false information. There's a few more. They're just a few I found scanning through. They once did one about me where they wrote a whole bespoke article to debunk something I'd said. Quite a well-written article, I have to say. It was written by a proper academic, so I'm just wondering if he did it for nothing or he got paid for it. I'll probably never know. But here's the paper under consideration today. This is it here. Facebook versus the BMJ, when fact-checking goes wrong, is this paper. It's available in the public domain. You don't have to pay for it. British Medical Journal have made this available. Here's some of their graphics demonstrating their points. And of course the whole article is there. As I say, public domain. Download it for yourself. It is worth a read. It is completely accessible. It's not written in any medical journal. It is all perfectly comprehensible. It's well referenced. You'll have no bother reading it at all if you're used to reading. It's no harder than reading an article in the Daily Telegraph or something like that. And it's all there. Read it. Don't take my word for it in case I get something wrong. But I'm going to try and give you the gist of something in what this is saying. And that was just published. I think it was published last week. So this is pretty new stuff. So what are they saying? So they're using terms like Facebook versus a British Medical Journal when fact-checking goes wrong. That's the article. Check it out for yourself. Facebook and the gatekeepers of international fact-checking. Good job we've got these gatekeepers of international fact-checking, or is it? That's what we're looking at. Now this this fact-checking, originally related to the article Research Blows the Whistle on Data Integrity Issues in Pfizer Vaccine Trial, which of course we covered in detail at the time, and I must say, having covered that in detail, I was left concerned. That was just me, but I was left concerned. Now, this article's got the highest Altmetric score of all time across all biomedical publications, so this was shared like heck all over the place. Now, Howard Kaplan, a retired dentist, posted a link on a private Facebook group. The investigation reported poor clinical trial research practices occurring at Ventavia, which you might remember is it actually says here. It's a contract research company helping to carry out the main Pfizer COVID-19 vaccine trials. And this is what Mr. Kaplan says. Mr. Kaplan, the dentist, says. The Facebook thought police had issued me a dire warning. Now, Thought police. I wonder where he got that concept from, the thought police. That thoughts are now being policed according to this way of thinking. Facebook's independent fact checker doesn't like the wording of an article in the British Medical Journal, according to Mr. Kaplan. And if I don't delete my posts, they are threatening to make my posts less visible, according to Mr. Kaplan's Facebook. Obviously, I will not delete my posts, Mr. Kaplan says. If it seems like I've disappeared for a while, you'll know why. If it disappeared for a while, I wonder if you'd call that censorship. I'll put a question mark there, but there you go. Now this is from the direct quote from the British Medical Journal. Over the past 2 months, the journal's editorial staff have been navigating the opaque appeals process without success, and still today their investigation remains obscured on Facebook. Now, this to me is all rather unfortunate, because I'd much prefer that they were focusing on what's the British Medical Journal about? Oh, medicine, that's right, because I get sick from time to time. And I'll get sick again, unless I die all of a sudden. And I would quite like doctors to be up to speed who treat me. And British Medical Journal is an important point of that. So rather than fight these sort of battles, I'd much prefer that the British Medical Journal were focusing on medicine. But it appears they have no choice but to focus on this at the moment. The experience has highlighted serious concerns about fact-checking. Serious concerns about fact-checking. Now, apparently this fact-checking, at least in this context, is done by third-party providers on Facebook. But of course, we also get fact-checkers on other media outlets, which is fair enough. But what concerns me about a lot of mainstream media outlets is the people doing the fact-checking are not medical doctors. They're not long-term nurses. They're not pharmacists. They're not scientists. They're journalists. Surely, if you're fact-checking a complicated technical issue, you need expansive knowledge in that area. Surely, I would have thought, wouldn't you? Surely, if you're going to critique, I mean, I wouldn't critique an article on ancient Chinese history. I wouldn't critique an article on aerodynamics. Far from it. Surely, to critique an article, you need a background in that subject and an understanding of the critiquing process. And I don't see how you can do that without working in that particular field, and yet a lot of people presume to do so and then tell us it's a fact-checked. This seems to be the situation we are in. Anyway, British Medical Journal think this results in censorship of information. Don't like that word at all, censorship. Other Facebook users have found themselves unable to share the article, getting things such as missing context. Independent fact checkers say the information could mislead people. Dear me, it could mislead people, Readers were directed to a fact check platform by Lead Stories, which seems to be one of these fact checkers. And their handle, or one of their things, seems to debunking fake news as it happens. So the inference there is, if they are debunking what is in the British Medical Journal, then surely it is a presupposition of that to assume that what is in the British Medical Journal is bunk. You know, is this not a somewhat pejorative place to start? Oh, I'm going to debunk that, as if it's an axiomatic truth that it is bunk to begin with. See the way the language is potentially being used here. But anyway, apparently this Lead Stories thing, the fact checkers, they were able to quote from a Pfizer spokesman, said that the company investigation did not identify any issues or concerns that would invalidate the data or jeopardise the integrity of the study. Not saying that's right, not saying it's wrong, but we would like to know a bit more about that detail. And just to quote a spokesman from the company, some people who are more cynical than me might think that that's a bit of a circular argument. Now, apparently no errors were actually found in the British Medical Journal article. No errors found. The Lead Story article not identified anything false or inaccurate, so there wasn't anything false or inaccurate in it, apparently. Lead Stories, which of course is the fact checker. So the Lead Stories article did not identify anything false or inaccurate. So they're not saying it was false or inaccurate. So what are they saying? Lead stories did not mention that the investigation was externally peer-reviewed. And the people who were peer-reviewing it are peers. And given this is a medical journal, peer reviewers are normally kept confidential, but I would imagine the peer reviewers are senior medical academics for a journal as prestigious as the British Medical Journal. At the time of going to press, Ventavia has not responded to the BMJ's repeated requests for information, apparently. But again, it's an awful lot of time they're spending doing this when I'd much prefer they were doing medicine. Pfizer told the BMJ actions were taken to correct and remediate where necessary. Good, but what were they? Are they saying there was a fault to begin with? FDA stated that it was unable to answer the BMJ's questions as it's an ongoing matter. FDA, would be interesting to hear the FDA's comment on this. Part of a wider problem, apparently Instagram and Facebook is owned by this new company called Meta, or conglomerate, I don't know what it is. But anyway, so it seems that there's been problems with Instagram and Facebook. A Cochrane spokesman said that in October, its Instagram account was shadow banned for 2 weeks. Now Cochrane is like the leading medical reviewer that international medical bodies and people like that take account of or almost follow when they're making their reviews. So it looks like Cochrane fell foul of the great omniscience, a bit of a strong word, isn't it? But the fact checkers at Facebook. Cochrane. That's just unbelievable. Apparently the account was shadow banned for 2 weeks, and this means apparently when other users tried to tag Cochrane, a message popped up saying Cochrane org has posted material that goes against false content guidelines. So this is the leading reviewers falling foul of false content guidelines. This is just beggars credulity, to be quite honest. Gillian York. Now, this is a Director of International Freedom of Expression Electronic Frontiers. This seems to be a non-profit organisation, not familiar with it. It's just quoted in the British Medical Journal article. I worry about the amount of power placed in the hands of these third-party groups. There's no accountability or structure, according to Gillian York. There's no democratic process to this. Facebook and some traditional media are reasonably concerned about vaccine misinformation, of course, but have swung so far in the opposite direction as to potentially shut down legitimate questions about major corporations. And she uses the example of Pfizer. We have to be able to have open debate. So it actually gets worse. This is these are the links. Where have we gone? There we go. These are some links. Apparently, this is a tweet from Lead Story. I have no reason to believe it's not genuine. Hey, BMJ latest. When your articles are literally being rubbished by a website run by someone in the disinformation dozen, perhaps you should be rewriting your editorial policies instead of writing open letters. And then this one. So this is related to Paul Thacker, who is the author of the British Medical Journal's investigation. Is really okay with being listed as an author on, and this is a sort of an anti-vax group, that many of us wouldn't agree with. In fact, that virtually all doctors would disagree with. But the fact that a legitimate medical story is a legitimate, truthful story where there was no untruths in, apparently, is picked up by this group. Or does he object to it? The answer will probably reveal a lot. I mean, what are the implications here? This is. I would have thought this is rather nasty, personalised stuff against Dr. or Mr. Thacker. So what they're saying here is to this author. They're saying, look, your stuff's been picked up by some dodgy people. Well, is that his fault if he's reporting truth? People have been saying this to me for the last couple of years now. They say, look, that article you wrote was picked up by this anti-vaccine group, or that article you wrote, or like that video you did was picked up by this pro-vaccine group, or don't you realise you're playing right into the hands of the anti-vaxxers or the anti-lockdowns or the anti-maskers? Well, no. If people choose to misinterpret what I say, as long as I'm trying to report the facts, as the British Medical Journal, I believe, did, then can we have what we say controlled just because a minority of fringe thinkers will abuse that in some way? I don't think we can. I think we have to say this accusation has been thrown at me so many times. Don't you realise that this has caused this particular consequence amongst this particular group of people who might misinterpret it and use it in the wrong ways? Well, surely the antidote to disinformation is more correct information. Trying to give truth. I get this a lot. There's about 20 or so channels, I don't know, dozen channels, a load of people trying to debunk my videos. so and of course, when people say I'm debunking John Campbell's videos, well, I don't care if they debunk me, but they have to debunk the truth. They have to debunk the evidence that I'm giving, not me. It's not about me. This is about the evidence. And of course, again, you have that pejorative assumption that if you're debunking one of my videos, there is that intrinsic axiomatic assumption that it's already bunk and it just needs to be debunked by some clever person. Now, I don't enter into debate with these people because what they normally are is relatively small YouTube channels who are trying to get lots of views, but by using my name. So let me give you some advice. If you want a YouTube channel that gets more views, work very hard, use lots of evidence, and try and be constructive, because that's what we've tried to do over the past couple of years. Not saying I've always got it right, not by any means, but you get some people helpfully trying to debunk my videos. So anyway, it's a quest for truth. Where is the evidence? Where is the credible source? And in my view, the British Medical Journal has been a good source of medical information since 1840. Now, finally, this is Kamran Abbasi, British Medical Journal's chief editor. We should all be very worried that Facebook, a multi-million-dollar company, is effectively censoring fully fact-checked journalism that is raising legitimate concerns about the conduct of clinical trials. I must say, I agree. Why is Facebook acting this way? Well, he doesn't know and I don't know. What's driving its worldview? Is it ideology? Is it commercial interests? Surely not, because we're dealing with people's health and well-being here. Is it incompetence? I don't know. And he says this, users should be worried that despite presenting itself as a neutral social media platform, Facebook is trying to control how people think under the guise of fact-checking. So there you go. Just because someone says this is a fact-check, I guess it would appear, doesn't mean to say they are necessarily reporting further facts. We need to go by the quality of evidence. This reminds me of the principle of evidence-based practice, really. Evidence-based practice has three components. And of course, we are predicated on Dr. Sackett's ideas of evidence-based practice. This is how practice is supposed to work. It's supposed to work now. The first one is research findings, and that's what we try and quote on here. What is the research actually saying? What is the empirical evidence? What is the trial evidence? What's the level of that evidence? How much can we apply that into the real world situation? Of course. The second point of evidence-based practice is expert opinion. So if I've got an opinion from someone, for example, like Professor Clancy in Australia, who we interviewed on this channel, who's a medical doctor, a doctor of philosophy, a doctor of science, fellow of the Royal College of Physicians, which of course is the qualification above membership, been honoured by his own country, hundreds of academic qualifications, then can you see that brings some credibility with it? And that's the second component of evidence-based practice. It is expert opinion. And I find that more convincing than someone who's just set up a business calling themselves a fact checker. And the third component of evidence practice is patient acceptability, what patients will accept. But what patients will accept should be based on the evidence, and it should be based on the integrity, the background and the qualification of the person giving that evidence. So there we go, British Medical Journal. You know, I think I might just have a quick flick through those again. I like those. It's actually quite a good history, that British Medical Journal. So there we go. First paper from 1840. First paper that I know of on chloroform and anaesthetics. First paper on asepsis in surgery. World's first clinical trial. The discovery of the association between carcinoma of the lung. All available free all over the world. Thank goodness these fact checkers have come along, because we were really floundering without that, weren't we? Okay, we'll leave it there. Some things to think about. Ominous. I feel it's really a pretty ominous situation, actually. I'm really hoping that, what was the word Mr. Orwell told us about? Oh, that's right, Newspeak. I'm really hoping Newspeak doesn't become the predominant language of our country by 2050. Thank you for watching.